Here I am being held by Aunt Jewel. Not only were we the oldest, but for a couple of years, preschool, kindergarten, first grade for me, Billy and I and Janet all lived in the same town, Parsons, with our grandparents, Uncle Mayfield and Aunt Florence, and we had a lot of good times together. Grandpa loved to fish. He took me fishing for the first time when I was 4 years old. Looks like he's really proud of that fish, doesn't it? Uncle Mayfield told me that that fish was a fake. I think he's probably right. And come to think of it, it really wouldn't surprise me. Grandpa loved to joke around and had a great sense of humor. Here are Grandpa and Grandma with Billy and me in front of 1530 Stevens Street, the house that will always be Grandma and Grandpa's home to me. You notice that Grandpa has a pipe in his right hand, and obviously something he has said has struck me as being very funny. At 505 West Euclid Street in Pittsburgh, Grandpa is holding a watermelon that he brought back from Texas. Aunt Jewel thought it was about 84 or 85 pounds, but Uncle Mayfield says it was 98 pounds, and he ought to know because he's the one who picked it. Grandpa loved watermelon, and he also loved popcorn. I can remember he popped it for us many times there in Parsons. See Grandpa pictured with the men of the family. Beside him is my dad, Merle Koval, Uncle Ray, Uncle Mayfield, and Uncle Rob. This tree grew right next to the porch on the house 1530 Stevens Street in Parsons. Grandpa kept corn in that soap dish for the squirrels who became quite tame. This shows the Parsons Kiwanis Club banquet at the Governor's Mansion in Topeka, Kansas from November 15, 1939. This is out of sequence, but it's the house that the Lewis family lived in Mountain View, Missouri, the year before the twins started school. My mother remembers very well that there was a wonderful peach tree there. After these 6 grandchildren came 7 more. This is Harold, son of Pansy and Forrest Sale. Louis Leroy Koval is pictured here with proud sisters Billy and Dorene. Here we see Grandma and Granddad with Billy and Dorene and Louis in the yard at 1530 Stevens Street. Aunt Pansy and Uncle Forrest lived on a farm that provided us with lots of summertime enjoyment. Here with the silo in the background are Harold, Anna Marie looking into Panda's mouth, Margaret on the left, and Ruth in the chair. Uncle Ray and Aunt Ethel added a little girl to their family, Carol Ann. 1951, Uncle Mayfield and Aunt Florence had a little girl, Patty. Here is Patty with Grandma. Here we see Aunt Ruth at her college graduation. She was the first, but she was to be followed by all of her brothers and sisters in attending college. She graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Did her master's at Columbia University in New York City. Aunt Ruth began her teaching career in Joplin, Missouri. I don't know whether this was the Joplin School or not, but it's at Garfield School, Room 7, 5th grade, A and B. Aunt Ruth taught for 34 years in the public schools of Newcastle, Pennsylvania. This picture from the Croton School there dates somewhere between 1929 and 1933. Aunt Ruth is at the desk and her two student teachers are standing in the front. We judged the date by Herbert Hoover's picture on the calendar. This is a banquet for the Croton School with Aunt Ruth presiding. Remember the photo of Aunt Ruth in her Uncle John's World War I Army uniform? We see her with Bob and George, my cousins, and she's in her own uniform of a U.S. Army WAC in World War II. This is a photo of the Red Cross workers in Newcastle, Pennsylvania at the time of World War II. Here is Aunt Ruth with Grandma, Granddad, and Aunt Jewel, I think on a trip to Colorado. While she lived in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, teaching there for 34 years, she lived with the Wide family, shown here. Mary Wide, Warren Wide, and their mother. Aunt Ruth at Niagara Falls. The top of Pikes Peak. Standing in a field, playing with the Wides, in front of John Alden's house. January 17th, 1943. Here with a class at the Lincoln School in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. This picture shows me with Aunt Ruth in 1958. That's in the house in Parsons. This shows Aunt Ruth coming out of a cave in Pennsylvania. She and some of her friends like to go picnicking in the wintertime, building fires back in the caves. This is Aunt Ruth with one of her favorite cousins, Arthur Lewis.